The first time I saw Brooke in 3 years, she was standing 20 yards away in a white wedding dress. I was in the lobby of a waterfront hotel in Charleston, wearing the only dark suit I owned and wondering whether walking through those doors had been the worst decision I'd made in a long time. Beyond the open glass doors, the harbor caught the afternoon sun. Wedding guests stood around with champagne, talking quietly while a photographer moved between them. Brooke hadn't seen me. She was beside Logan Pierce. Most people in Charleston knew Logan's face. He hosted a local television show, owned several fitness clubs, and showed up at enough charity events that his name seemed permanently attached to something. For the past few months, people had been calling this the wedding of the year. I kept my right hand inside my jacket pocket. My fingers rested against an old phone. I hadn't turned it on in almost 3 years. The battery had been replaced that morning. Everything else was exactly as I'd left it. Brooke's messages, her admissions, the argument about the money, and several things she'd apparently forgotten she'd ever written. I hadn't come there planning to make a scene. At 35, I'd spent enough years managing construction projects to know that making noise and solving a problem weren't the same thing. Maybe I'd leave. I'd considered that possibility twice since parking my truck. Then Brooke laughed at something Logan said. Same laugh I remembered. For a second, 3 years disappeared. Then I felt the phone against my palm again. That was why I stayed. Because whatever happened next, I finally understood something I'd avoided admitting for years. Walking away from Brooke had been possible. Forgetting what she'd done was possible too. But standing there while she built a new life on a lie about me, that was different. And once I walked into that hotel, pretending the past didn't matter was no longer an option. 3 years earlier, Brooke and I had been planning our own wedding. We'd been together almost 5 years by then. We shared a small house outside Charleston, split the bills, and kept a separate savings account for the down payment on a place we hoped to buy after we got married. I managed construction projects. Brooke worked in event planning, which meant her schedule changed constantly. I was used to late calls and weekend work. Then she joined a charity project connected to a local sports foundation. That was where Logan Pierce first entered our conversations. For a while, Brooke mentioned him constantly. Logan said this. Logan thought that. He was funny, confident, good with donors, good with cameras, good at making everybody in a room feel important. Then, almost overnight, she stopped saying his name. I noticed. I just didn't understand why yet. Soon there were late meetings, weekend errands, trips I heard about at the last minute. Her phone got a new password. When I walked into a room, she'd sometimes turn the screen face down. I explained every detail away. We were getting married. I trusted her, and trust made every warning sign look harmless. Everything changed on a Thursday evening that should have meant nothing. Brooke told me she was driving to Savannah after work to spend the night with her sister. I remember telling her to be careful because rain was moving in from the south. Around 7, I left a job site near the coast and took a different route home to avoid traffic. That's when I saw Brooke's car. It was parked outside an expensive restaurant overlooking the water, nearly 2 hours from where she claimed to be. I slowed down. For a few seconds, I considered pulling into the lot and walking inside. I didn't. Instead, I parked across the street, took one photograph showing her license plate and the restaurant sign, then drove home. Brooke didn't answer when I called later. That night, I sat alone at our kitchen table and replayed the past few months without defending her. If you've made it this far, this story clearly caught your attention. If you're enjoying it, drop a like on the video. It helps me see what kind of stories you want more of next. Let's keep going. The meetings, the password, the disappearing hours. She came home the next morning talking casually about Savannah. I listened. Then I understood. Brooke wasn't confused. She was lying directly to my face. I didn't show Brooke the photograph. That evening, I waited until dinner was finished and asked one question. Is there something you want to tell me? She stared at the table for a long time. Then she admitted there was another man. It had been going on for months. I asked who he was. She refused to tell me. What bothered me most was how prepared she seemed. There was no panic, no attempt to repair anything. Brooke said she didn't want our wedding anymore and would move her things out within a few days. I didn't ask her to reconsider. By Saturday, most of her clothes were gone. Then I checked our wedding account. Thousands of dollars were missing. When I asked about it, Brooke called the money her share, as if we'd already divided everything without a conversation. That was when the truth became simple. I hadn't lost Brooke outside that restaurant. Our relationship had ended long before then. I had simply been the last person informed. I saved our final messages on an old phone, including her admission and the argument over the money. Then I shut it off and put it in a drawer. For 3 years, Brooke and I barely spoke. Charleston wasn't large enough to make someone disappear completely, so I heard things through mutual friends. She dated a few men after leaving me, which surprised me. I'd assumed the affair had been about one particular man. Eventually, Logan Pierce appeared. Within months, Brooke was beside him everywhere. Charity dinners, sporting events, television functions. Photographs showed them smiling beneath banners carrying his name. I ignored it. Then their engagement made the local news. I wouldn't have read the article if a friend hadn't sent it to me. Most of it was harmless. Wedding plans. Their first date. Brooke describing Logan as the first man who made her feel safe. Then I reached one paragraph. She mentioned a painful, toxic relationship before Logan. She said she'd been forced to leave after losing trust in her former partner. I read those words twice. There was no name. There didn't need to be. Anyone who knew our history would know she meant me. Brooke hadn't just hidden what she'd done. She had rewritten it. And somehow, I had become the betrayal. At first, I told myself the article didn't matter. Then Brooke's version of our past started appearing elsewhere. Interviews mentioned how Logan had helped her trust again. People repeated the story because it fit the image they were selling. Two successful people who had finally found something honest. The irony wasn't lost on me. A month before the wedding, a mutual acquaintance mentioned that Brooke would soon have access to several of Logan's business accounts. They were also discussing investments they planned to make together after they married. That changed something for me. This wasn't about correcting gossip anymore. Logan was preparing to tie his finances to someone who had once emptied part of a wedding fund while leaving me and then called the money hers. That night, I opened the drawer in my home office. The old phone was still there. I charged it and read everything. Brooke admitting the affair. Brooke asking me not to tell our friends. Brooke arguing about the missing money. Her own words contradicted the woman she had become publicly. I could have posted them online. I didn't. Instead, I searched for one thing. The date of her wedding. I got into the hotel because a subcontractor I knew was helping with the reception setup. He assumed I was there for business, and I never corrected him. I stayed away from the ceremony. During the reception, I stood near the back while Logan gave a speech about marriage. He talked about honesty, trust, and how Brooke had taught him not to be afraid of the past. That was when Brooke saw me. Her smile disappeared. 10 minutes later, she found me alone in a hallway near the elevators. "What are you doing here?" Her voice was quiet, but her hands were shaking. "I haven't decided yet." "You need to leave, Nathan." Before I answered, Logan came around the corner. Brooke changed instantly. She told him I was her obsessed ex-fiancé. According to her, I'd never accepted the breakup and had shown up to destroy their wedding. Logan looked at me, waiting. I didn't defend myself. I reached inside my jacket and took out the old phone. Then I opened Brooke's messages and handed it to him. "Just read it." Brooke stopped breathing for a second. Logan looked down, and I stepped back. I left the hotel 20 minutes later. I didn't ask Logan what he planned to do, and I didn't wait around to watch Brooke explain herself. I'd given him information. What happened with it belonged to him. 3 days later, Logan called me. His sister Erin had read the messages too. She managed finances for several of his businesses, and the part that interested her wasn't Brooke's affair. It was the wedding money she'd taken. Logan told me he'd canceled their honeymoon and started reviewing things he'd never questioned before. What he found surprised even me. During the first months Brooke was dating Logan, she'd apparently continued seeing another man in secret. Logan's attorney was now discussing whether an annulment was possible. Erin had frozen Brooke's planned access to business accounts, and several joint investments had been stopped before any money changed hands. His lawyers were also reviewing wedding expenses. I listened without satisfaction. When Logan finished, he thanked me. "You didn't know me this." "No," I said, "but you deserve the truth." After we hung up, I put the old phone back in my desk. I had nothing else to do. Brooke contacted me 4 days later. Her message was long enough that I had to scroll several times. She accused me of waiting 3 years for revenge. She said I'd deliberately chosen her wedding because I wanted maximum damage. According to Brooke, she'd changed. Her past with me had nothing to do with Logan, and I had destroyed her chance to begin a new life because I couldn't accept that ours was over. 3 years earlier, I would have answered every sentence. I would have corrected dates, reminded her who had lied, and explained why taking money from our wedding account wasn't simply dividing property. This time, I just read. Near the end, Brooke wrote that I should be ashamed of what I'd done. I stared at that sentence for a while. Then something occurred to me. Across that entire message, she hadn't written the one thing I'd once waited months to hear. I'm sorry for what I did to you. Not once. That told me everything. Logan knew the truth now. Brooke knew why he'd learned it. I didn't need her agreement. I didn't need an apology either. I closed the message, blocked her number, and went back to work. Several months later, a mutual friend told me Brooke and Logan were finished. He started explaining what had happened after the wedding, but I stopped him. I didn't ask about the annulment, the lawyers, or whether anyone recovered money. I realized I genuinely didn't care. That evening, while looking for an old charger in my desk, I found the phone again. I turned it on. There were photographs from the life Brooke and I had shared. Vacations, Christmas mornings, a picture of us standing in the empty lot where we'd once talked about building a house. For years, those pictures had felt like evidence of something stolen from me. Now they were just pictures. I opened Brooke's messages. I expected anger, maybe satisfaction. There was nothing, so I deleted the messages. Then the photographs. When the screen was empty, I turned the phone off and left it on the desk. I'd once believed this story would end when Brooke finally lost the life she'd built on lies. I had been wrong. It ended quietly, months later, in an empty room. It ended when I understood that whatever happened to Brooke next no longer had anything to do with me. That's the end of this story. If you made it all the way here, consider subscribing to stay with us. I've placed a couple of recommended videos on screen for you. Pick one and keep watching. I'll see you in the next story.